Reshiram feels a little bit underrated, which is almost a blasphemous statement to be making about a restricted legendary Pokemon, but you don't really see it popping up too much. I think when I last looked at Peakalytics, it had something like a 0.06% usage, which is not common by any means, but honestly, Reshiram, I think, has potential. It is definitely on my radar for something I want to try to team build around. I've already done both Kyurem White and Kyurem Black, and officially, before Reg G began, or rather unofficially, we did do Zekrom. So it only feels right to take a look at Reshiram and take some ideas into consideration for getting a team built around it and eventually hitting the ranked ladder with it. So as far as Reshiram's ability goes, it does have Turbo Blaze, which is the signature ability of itself and its Kyurem White counterpart. Now Turbo Blaze is effectively just Mold Breaker. It allows Reshiram's attacks and the effects of its attacks to ignore the abilities of other Pokemon, which could be great seeing as there's a lot of Flash Fire Pokemon that love turning into grass types. So maybe your opponent thinks they're being clever and they just have a fireproof grass type. Think again. You just became weak to fire, and we are going to incinerate you with either a blue flare or a fusion flare for that matter, or I guess any fire type attack, because Reshiram has a really good special attack stat and plenty of fire moves to choose from. And also, the nice thing about Turbo Blaze is abilities like, say, Sturdy, well, you don't have to worry about them having that built-in Focus Sash effect, because if you hit them hard enough, you're just going to straight up pick up a knockout. And honestly, when I was practicing with Kyurem White, like this is a little bit of a side note, I hit an Ogerpon Cornerstone with a Blizzard and just one-shot it immediately, so that was super satisfying. I would love to be able to recreate something like that with Reshiram and its Turbo Blaze. So I digress. Turbo Blaze definitely lets Reshiram have some fun. And plus, as far as Reshiram's typing goes, it's Dragon Fire. Both of these types complement each other really nicely. Fire provides a resistance to Fairy and Ice, which Dragon is otherwise weak to, so that becomes neutral, and then Dragon provides a resistance to Water, so Fire is now losing its weakness to that, so it's now neutral to Water type attacks as well. As far as the resistances go for Reshiram's typing, you have 2 4x resistances to both Fire and Grass. You resist Bug, Steel, and Electric, and then you're weak to Dragon, Rock, and Ground. So overall, not a bad defensive breakdown, because we have 3 weaknesses, 3 resistances, and then 2 4x resistances at the end of the day. And as far as Reshiram's stats go, we're very similar to Palkia. For that matter, with the exception of the HP and the speed stat, Reshiram's stats are almost identical to base Palkia's. We have 100 HP, 120 attack, 100 defense, 150 special attack, 120 special defense, and 90 speed. And 90 speed is the main common ground for the speed stat for most restricted Pokemon. So overall, it's not too bad. You throw 2 points into your speed stat, you're outspeeding a Shadow Rider under Tailwind, so that's always nice at the end of the day. And honestly, you get a helping hand boost into Reshiram, and those special attacks are just doing so much raw damage. And honestly, too, I'm gonna jump into the funny idea right now. You have 120 attack, you have 90 speed. Let's throw a Jolly Nature on there. I know this feels so wrong, but we bring up our speed to 143 in the bare minimum. We can go into max attack. Again, this feels wrong, but it's meant to be funny. We go Flare Blitz. Nice base 120 physical fire type attack. We go Dragon Dance. Now we're getting a speed boost and attack boost. That 120 attack is now no longer terrible. And then we can throw in some other moves. I don't know. Like maybe we can throw in Dragon Claw if we really want to do. We could also double up on Scale Shot. Or we can go for maybe, say, dual Wing Beat for some flying coverage if we wanted to, or maybe even... I didn't realize this one got Psychic. You could go Stone Edge. You could do something like that if you wanted to embrace the meme, and you know what? You could even just throw a Clear Amulet. Now you're not Intimidate fodder. There's a funny idea for Reshiram right there. You can now speed yourself up with the Jolly, get that Dragon Dance off, you have an attack boost, you have a speed boost. At +1 attack right here, your 172 is going to go up to pause for effect, you're going up to 258 after a Dragon Dance. Which, actually, I want to double check that, because that math feels wrong. I might have bumped a button. Nope, it is 258. Okay, so we're not going to show the calculator there, but case in point, Reshiram with a Dragon Dance at 172 is going to be wild for the attack, and then with the 143, you're going to be able to outspeed a Dragon Pult because your speed stat is going to go up to 214. So you don't see Dragon Pult, but that said, nice little speed indicator just to have a rough reference point. Now, you are a little bit slower than Zacian Crowned, but you're fairly comparable to it at the end of the day. You run into something that's not necessarily max speed, and you might be able to outspeed it with Dragon Dance, but I digress. Special attacking Reshiram is going to be really nice. Reshiram has two signature fire type attacks in the form of Blue Flare and Fusion Flare. Blue Flare here has a base 130 power, it's 85 accuracy, but it does have a nice 20% chance to burn the target. And honestly, Blue Flare just has such a raw damage output. It's a really nice thing, especially if you get the sun up on the field. And then Fusion Flare, it does share with Kyurem White when Kyurem does absorb Reshiram to take on that form. But Fusion Flare here is a base 100 power fire type attack with 100 accuracy, and it's not likely going to happen, but if Fusion Bolt goes before Fusion Flare, well, Fusion Flare's power is going to double and vice versa. If Fusion Flare goes first, then Fusion Bolt's going to go, but you're probably not going to see Reshiram and one of the Zekrom variants, whether it's Zekrom itself or Kyurem Black, go for Fusion Flare, but there is that side effect as well, so there is that. So what can we do with Reshiram? So Reshiram does have a few nice options as far as its held items go, as well as its moves. If you wanted to go for a full damaging set and go for an item that locks you into a damaging move, or if you wanted to run an Assault Vest, what you could do is you could run Blue Flare, Draco Meteor, and Earth Power. Ground coverage is going to be really nice for hitting rock types that would resist your fire type stab. So you could run Earth Power, you could run a combination of either Solar Beam, seeing as that's some great grass type damage. If you get grassy terrain up, you're going to get a bonus modifier from that. You could run Heat Wave, and then that way too you do have a nice spread option with 95 power and 90 accuracy. You could have, say, Fusion Flare as an alternative to Blue Flare, and then double up with Heat Wave that way too. You could run Shadow Ball, and then this way you do have some Ghost type coverage to hit Fluttermanes, as well as Shadow Riders, or even, well, I was going to say even Ice Rider, but you get the Fire type to deal with that, but you do have it to hit Lunala with. So that's a fair trade, being able to hit Lunala and Necrozma Dawnwings. So having the Shadow Ball wouldn't be the worst thing imaginable. If you wanted to as well, you could also go for, say, maybe Hyper Voice. If you want to run a Throat Spray, you could run Weather Ball on Reshiram too. Weather Ball could actually be kind of interesting, especially if you're playing with Sun, and then that way Weather Ball turns into a fire type attack. It doubles the power and then gains the 50% boost from the Sun. But if you're running up against an opposing Rain or Sand team, having your Weather Ball changing coverage type to Water or Rock could be really nice. If you run into an Alolan Ninetales, having some ice coverage off Reshiram, not many people would be expecting that, but that would be really nice as well, because when you see Alolan Ninetales, that doesn't necessarily guarantee you're seeing a full-on Snow team. You're seeing Aurora Veil, which means if you have, like, say, an opponent that runs Alolan Ninetales and Miraidon, which I have run into, well, now you just gained an ice-type means of hitting a Miraidon, so that could be spicingly chilly, so that could be nice. So what could we run for an item in this case, whereas I did mention the Assault Vest or a choice item? So if you want to run an Assault Vest, well, you have a base 120 special defense. Without any investment in having max IVs, you hit 140. You get a 50% boost from your Assault Vest right here, so the 50% boost right there. Half of 140 is 70, so you're going up to 210 right there with no investment at all into your special defense, which means Reshiram has the potential to be very, very bulky on the specially defensive side. If you wanted to, you could run a little bit of investment onto it, like maybe bump up that 140 to say maybe 150. Half of 150 would be 75, so now you're going up to 225. You could go up for a lot of HP if you really wanted to, like maybe go up to say 205 into your HP, so 236 EVs, and then you could dump like say maybe the rest of your remaining EVs into a modest boosted special attack to hit 214, or you could divvy it up between your defense as well. Maybe you only want to go up to the 210 in the special attack, put the 2 points into your speed just to be able to hit that benchmark to outspeed Shadow Rider under Tailwind, and then just dump a little bit into your defense just to get a little bit of bulk. Reshiram's base 100 defense and 100 HP is not necessarily the bulkiest on the physical side, but if you have, say, something like, say, Reflect or maybe even Aurora Veil, you could have a great defensive, or rather defensively bulky Pokemon ready to go. Snow and Reshiram is kind of a weird concept to me, but Sun and Reshiram would definitely be nice as well. So maybe you could do like a combination of like say a Alolan Ninetales and maybe a Tornadus with Sunny Day, and then that way too you could have Aurora Veil and then turn on the Sun to boost up your fire type attacks. You could do something like that. If you wanted to, you could run a Choice Specs variant. We'll take out the defensive investment. We'll max out our special attack and our speed here. We could run the Choice Scarf first here to show off the 50% boost to our speed with a 142 right here and a Choice Specs. Well, now we're going to be very, very close to Dragapult comparatively in speed terms. So with that 142 and the 50%, we're going to hit, we hit 213, which is exactly what a max speed Dragapult is. So for comparison wise, that's where you're at. So you are still getting outsped by, say, speed boosting Photosynthesis Fluttermane, as well as speed boosting Quark Drive Iron Bundle, Regieleki, Shadow Rider, Zacian Crown. They still outspeed you, but this is with a modest nature. So if you switch to a timid nature, basically what we're going to see here is our special attack is going to drop from 222 to 202. Now our speed hits 156 right here. So now we are basically on par with max speed invested timid Kyogre, Jolly Groudon, though you don't really see the Jolly Groudon, but timid Kyogre you definitely do see. So comparison wise, you now speed tie a max speed investment Kyogre with the Choice Scarf. Well, now you're going to outspeed it. If you're playing the Weather War and you have, say, the Solar Beam instead, and your Sunsetter comes in, whether it's a Torkoal or a Torn going for Sunny Day, well, now you outspeed that Kyogre, fire off a Solar Beam, and bam! That said, Solar Beam is a little bit risky to lock yourself into on a choice set, so maybe not the best example, but just food for thought if you're running a Life Orb set, which we're going to talk about in a moment there. But anyways, with a Choice Scarf at 156, you are going to get that 50% boost, and that means you are going to go from 156 speed to 234. So still a little bit slower than Fluttermane, Bundle, and Regieleki, so long as they don't have any speed boosts for the first two with their respective abilities. But if they don't have their abilities active and giving them speed boosts, you are going to outspeed those with the Scarf, which could be really nice at the end of the day. The Choice Scarf here does allow Reshiram to naturally outspeed Shadow Rider, so if you wanted to have Shadow Ball into your moveset, you could have that to hit them for some big damage. Though if your opponent thinks a Shadow Ball is coming, you could go for maybe, say, a Blue Flare or a Draco Meteor anyways, because they might just Terastallize into a different type to get away from that Ghost Psychic typing. So you could maybe go for the Blue Flare, turn on the Sun, and then just let Reshiram do what it wants to do and just incinerate the field. So you do have that at the end of the day. If you wanted to, you could run the Specs as well instead of a Scarf. So if you run the Specs, you get a 50% boost to your special attack. So right here, a 50% boost to 202, well, that's 101 right there. So you have 100 or 303 special attack after that Choice Specs. You turn on the Sun, well, it's gonna be great. Now, one thing that I think is going to be really good for Reshiram down the road is once we get a format that has access to 2 restricted legendaries, well then having Groudon or Koridon next to Reshiram could be really good since they naturally set the sun, and Groudon could be a really nice partner for Reshiram as well, seeing as we don't have to worry about Koridon and Reshiram overlapping the same dragon type weakness. Groudon being a ground type is going to be really nice at the end of the day, because not only can it not be weak to dragon type attacks, it's a fairly decent check to Miraidon, and especially if you have some redirection, you could let Groudon deal with Miraidon, have an attack get redirected by a partner, then let Groudon go for Precipice Blades into Miraidon to pick up the knockout. So that could be really good down the road. But right now we only have the single restricted Pokemon, so if you didn't want to run a choice set, a Life Orb could be really nice here. And then that way too, you can now run Protect. So if you wanted to, you could run Blue Flare, Draco Meteor, or Earth Power. You could change Earth Power out for either Shadow Ball or Solar Beam. So you could do that. On the supportive side though too, Reshiram does get Noble Roar. So Noble Roar lowers the target's attack and special attack one stage. It's essentially Parting Shot without the pivoting factor. So something that might be a little bit interesting there is you could have that means of lowering your opponent's damage output if you wanted to, just as a little bit of tech. So you do have that. Reshiram does get access to Will-O-Wisp as well, so you can burn the target if it connects. So that could be great for dealing with some physical attackers. Not necessarily the best move to run on a Life Orb set, but we're just going to talk about some supportive things right now. Also, it's really weird to me that Reshiram gets Body Press, but it does. Let's bring up some status moves. Yeah, so Reshiram does get access to Light Screen as well. Tailwind could be really nice with Reshiram as well. Reshiram's 90 speed definitely benefits from Tailwind, so if you wanted to, you could have some redirection. Maybe your opponent thinks you're trying to go for Tailwind with Tornadus, and you don't lead Torn. You bring out, say, maybe something like an Ogerpon. They go for a Follow Me with Ogerpon, or rather, you go for a Follow Me. And then Reshiram clicks the Tailwind, and now you have speed. Now Reshiram can do some big damage, or you could lead Reshiram Torn. Your opponent thinks Torn is going for Tailwind. Well, Torn goes for Sunny Day, Reshiram goes for Tailwind, and if they lead poorly into that combination, well, now you just doubled your speed. You just turned on your fire. Now you're looking to do some major damage, so you could actually justify Heat Wave in that sense. Maybe you want to run the Heat Wave with some Tailwind and Sunny Day support together. That could be really nice. And then as far as some other status moves goes, Reshiram does get Helping Hand, which if you have a really hard-hitting Pokemon next to Reshiram, Helping Hand could be a really nice thing at the end of the day. Maybe you have an Urshifu Single Strike, you go for the Helping Hand. Helping Hand is one of those moves that I don't think people expect to see coming off restricteds very often, so you go for that, and then this way they might be expecting the heavy hit to come from the restricted. They might try to double up. Well, because of how high Helping Hand's priority is, Reshiram would be able to move before that, and then the partner Pokemon could just go for the major damage. In the case of Urshifu Single Strike, for example, you're getting your Wicked Blow or Close Combat off, and next thing you know, you're doing some major damage to your opponent. And then Roar is a nice move to have on Reshiram, potentially, because Roar can undo status boosts that your opponent wants to go for if they're trying to set up right in front of Reshiram. If they have a Trick Room setter, well, Roar's priority isn't as low as Trick Room. Trick Room actually goes after Roar, so you can go for the Roar and just phase them out and then just deny Trick Room that way too. So that could be some really good tech at the end of the day as far as some status moves go. And plus, Reshiram does get Reflected Light Screen as well too, so dual screen support could be really funny, but Reshiram probably shouldn't be running dual screens. Reshiram should probably be focusing on doing a little bit of damage and maybe having that tiny little bit of support in the background, whether it's the Will-O-Wisp, the Tailwind, or even the Helping Hand. Roar is a very, very low on the priority list for what you should probably run on Reshiram, but you could do something like that. Another thing that I saw on Pikalytics was people were running the Wide Lens to get the accuracy boost. So you'd get a 10% accuracy boost right here. That 85 accuracy on Blue Flare will be benefiting from the wide lens. We're talking a little bit of math here in this video, a little bit more than I normally do. But if you get that 10% boost to the 85, your Blue Flare is going up to 93. Still not the most accurate, but at the end of the day, it's better than having just a strict 85. So having that little bit of a modifier could be nice. And plus, Draco Meteor is also a base 90 accuracy move, so getting that 10% boost right there, you're getting up an extra 9 points. Now you almost have a completely accurate Draco Meteor, so that's going to be great. And if you're running Heat Wave would also benefit from a wide lens as well, so definitely a valid option to consider for an item on Reshiram. And then another thing could be the Throat Spray. Reshiram does get Hyper Voice, which I think I mentioned earlier on in this video, but you have Hyper Voice potentially to boost up your special attack, and then this way too, you have a nice normal type spread damage as well, so you go for the Hyper Voice, you can potentially break some sashes, your Throat Spray activates, you now get a special attack boost. This doesn't necessarily synergize the greatest with Draco Meteor, so maybe consider running Dragon Pulse. I forgot I had a second D there. But maybe consider running Dragon Pulse instead of Draco Meteor if you're going to do this. Now you get that special attack boost. Blue Flare definitely benefits from it. Dragon Pulse benefits from it. And if you really wanted to, you could go for another Hyper Voice at the end of the day, just to do some more damage. And one really nice thing that I forgot to mention right at the beginning of the video when I was talking about Reshiram's typing here being a fire type, this thing threatens Zamazenta really nicely, seeing as it is a heavy-hitting special attacker. There's a lot of physical Pokemon in the format. You can threaten Zamazenta with the Blue Flare. You can threaten it with an Earth Power as well. If your opponent runs Terra Grass Zamazenta, well, Blue Flare just absolutely makes it not want to run the Terra Grass. So you do have that. If your opponent's running Terra Water, well, you have the Draco Meteor to get around that. And plus, Dauntless Shield only boosts up the physical defense stat one stage. It doesn't boost to both defenses, so you can take advantage of the fact that Reshiram is that heavy-hitting special attacker that could potentially crack through Zamazenta. That could be another thing. And if you have that Throat Spray Reshiram, you get that +1 into your special attack. Well, now Zamazenta is... Well, Zamazenta is not appreciating that next follow-up special attack after the Throat Spray boosts up your special attack. So there is that. Anyways, let's talk about some potential partners for Reshiram. Now, some of the big ones that you would typically see when you look at Picolytics is both Rillaboom and Incineroar, so I feel like they're kind of a given. Same with Urshifu, Rapid Strike, because then you have your Fire, Water, Grass core of all those great supportive Pokemon, but let's take a look at some other potential options. As I mentioned, Tornadus could be really good, seeing as you have access to both Sunny Day as well as Tailwind. And both of these are going to benefit from Prankster. If you wanted to double up, you could even run, say, maybe Heat Wave on the Torn and maybe have Bleak Wind as an option if you didn't want to necessarily run a... Torn that has Protect. If you want to run a more offensive Torn, you could do something like this, have the Heat Wave, the Bleak Wind, maybe consider running a Focus Sash or a Covert Cloak. That could be an option. I did see Murkrow was popping up on Picolytics as well, and you know what, similarly enough to Torn, it does benefit from the fact that it has Prankster, and it also does get Sunny Day as well as Tailwind, so we could potentially see Murkrow coming in and doing some stuff to help out Reshiram. Quash is another potentially nice option of getting around some faster Pokemon. If you don't want to necessarily deal with Miraidon shenanigans, and maybe you don't want to take a Draco Meteor, or maybe you're unsure if they're going to go for a Volt Switch or not, you can go for that Quash, and so long as they don't have, like, say, a Furrygraph with Armor Tail or Psychic Terrain up, you can make Miraidon go last from Quash, and then Reshiram in turn could hit it with a Draco Meteor just to nail that thing. So you could potentially do something like that with Murkrow. Torkoal could be a nice Pokemon here. Now, it is drastically slower, so if you wanted to run a Trick Room-esque team with Torkoal and then have some support that way, you could do that. Torkoal being a super slow Pokemon is great, because that means when it comes to weather dynamics, the slowest Pokemon gets to keep its respective weather. Torkoal's got a base speed of 20. A base speed of 20. So, I think the closest thing as far as setting weather goes is Gigalith, and Gigalith's not in the game, so we don't have to worry about that. So I think the next closest speed would actually be Pelipper. Yeah, I think the next closest speed is Pelipper there, so we don't have to worry, because although the Ninetales is fast at 109 speed. Is it 109 speed? Yeah, it is 109 speed. So although the Ninetales would set snow, but Torkoal would immediately override that with Drought, so you wouldn't even have to worry about that per se. You're naturally turning on, say, a Solar Beam for Reshiram, you're boosting up Blue Flare, Heat Wave, Fusion Flare. Torkoal could even just run a supportive set instead of just the typical Eruption Protect stuff. You could do something like, say, Helping Hand, Yawn. You could run Heat Wave just to have some damage right here. You could run Protect, or if you wanted to, you could run Clear Smog. Clear Smog could be good for undoing some status boosts on your opponent's side of the field. So there is that, but I feel like Protect would probably be a good idea. So you could do something like this, run a Citrus Berry, and then you could max out your HP. Maybe throw a Calm Nature on to Torkoal just so that you can get some good special defense to match that nice natural 140 physical defense. So maybe you go 212, and then you just have the remaining EVs go into the special attack. Now, I'm not necessarily advocating this exact kind of a spread for a Torkoal, but you could maybe do something like this to be a little bit of support for Reshiram, and then that way too, you have the Sun. You can go for a Yawn to put a little bit of a switch timer on your opponent if they have to go to sleep or if they have to switch their Pokemon. Then that forces them to be into that dilemma. And then another thing that could be really nice for Reshiram, and I didn't touch on this yet, is Dragon Cheer Pokemon in general. So Reshiram, naturally being a Dragon type, benefits from the fact that Dragon Cheer would raise its critical hit ratio 2 stages naturally. So if you wanted to, you could maybe say take Gouging Fire, or maybe say Roaring Moon, put a booster energy onto those Pokemon, and then what you could do is you can go for the Dragon Cheer. Reshiram could maybe say run the Scope Lens, and that'll naturally put you at a critical hit ratio of 1 to begin with, which means you can now run Draco. You could run Draco Meteor, and then this way, with the guaranteed critical hit modifier from Dragon Cheer, boosting it by 2, and the Scope Lens boosting that 1 to 2 as well to get a grand total of 4. Now you don't have to worry about your own special attack drops. Draco Meteor is going to be constantly going at full power, and you don't have to worry at the end of the day unless your Scope Lens gets knocked off or you switch. But even then, you naturally reset your special attack drops. So a Dragon Cheer Pokemon could be really nice, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Roaring Moon, but I like the idea of Roaring Moon or Iron Jugulus doing this, seeing as with the booster energy, they get fairly fast at the end of the day. Like a jolly Roaring Moon with a speed boosting Photosynthesis is going to hit 188 before the speed boost. So right there, you're going to be outspeeding a lot of Pokemon on the field. You can go for that Dragon Cheer, or you could even have the Tailwind option as well. And then this way too, Reshiram gets speed or the critical hit modifier, and just a lot of damage is going to happen. That's all I'm saying there. So you could have something like that on like Roaring Moon and Reshiram, and then that way too, Reshiram could do some major damage. And also, Roaring Moon does get access to Sunny Day, like most of the, actually I think all the Scarlet Paradoxes, yeah, all the Scarlet Paradox Pokemon do get access to Sunny Day. So if you really wanted to, you could have that speed boosting Photosynthesis. You could turn on the Sunny Day, and then that way, if you're worried about, say, Tornadus going down too early, you have a backup plan for Sunny Day shenanigans. So just some food for thought on that with Roaring Moon, and Iron Jugulus could do something really similar too. So that could be really funny. I really like the idea of turning on Sunny Day for Reshiram or Tailwind or even the Dragon Shear. So that could be really slick. And then that way too, you get that extra damage modifier. You do some major damage. You clean up. Anyways, I'm going to cut it there because I feel like I've talked long enough. It's actually been 30 minutes. So yeah, we're going to end right there. Thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble about Reshiram. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. This thing's been around for a very long time, so there's definitely some other strategies that can definitely be incorporated into team building around it. So I would love to hear your thoughts on it as well. Anyways, see you next time.